Hi, so today for our group time, we're going to go over the two sides of World War One. I'm sure some of you remember from last time what those two sides were, but we're going to dive in a little bit deeper on those today. Briefly, just as a recap, World War One is a global conflict that took place between 1914 and 1918. It's known as the Great War, the First World War, and it was fought mainly in Europe, but it also spread to the Middle East, Africa, and Asia. Now, most of the war was fought using artillery, like large weapons such as a cannon, machine guns, rifles, but the conflict also featured bombing raids, the use of poison gas, and saw the introduction of new technology such as tanks, military aircraft, and submarines. Now, what was different about this war was that there were huge numbers of people involved. Soldiers fought and died in millions, and the entire populations were expected to help make weapons and support the war. World War One was the first conflict that was fought on a worldwide scale. So let's talk about the two sides. We have the Allies and the Central Powers. So I'm just going to make a list here. Allies. Now the Triple Entente was the name given to the alliance between Russia, France, and Britain during World War I. Now, these countries were also known as the Allies. You won't usually hear Triple Entente. Normally you hear it as the Allies. So, who was that again? That was Russia, France, and Britain. So I'm going to write these down as we come to them. Okay. So the Allies were fighting against Germany, Austria-Hungary, and the Turkish Ottoman Empire. In Western Europe, Belgium supported Britain and France in the fight against Germany. The British and French armies were large, but the Belgian army was small and inexperienced. In Eastern Europe, Germany faced the huge Russian army as well as smaller armies from the Balkans. In the Far East, Japan supported Britain and the Allies and invaded German colonies. So, let's go ahead and put Japan down. So Japan, they invaded the colonies in China and the Pacific Ocean. Italy, who had remained neutral, which means that they supported neither side until this point, joined the war in 1915 on the side of the Allies to help fight Austria-Hungary. And the U.S. entered the war in 1917. Italy. Okay. Russia, France, Britain, Belgium, Japan, Italy, U.S. on the Allies. Okay? So the other side is called the Central Powers. Let's learn a little bit about them. Okay. The Central Powers was the name given to Germany, Austria-Hungary, and their supporters during World War I. Okay? Germany, Austria-Hungary. They were fighting against the allied countries of Britain, France, and Russia. The entry of the Turkish Ottoman Empire into the war as an ally of Germany in the fall of 1914 spread the conflict to the Middle East. So we can put Turkish or Ottoman Empire. Okay. I'm going to make sure that you guys can see that. So it spread to the Middle East. Bulgaria also joined the Central Powers, helping to defeat Serbia in 1915 and Romania the following year. So we have Bulgaria. big area. All right, the German army was the strongest in Europe because it had been preparing for war all this time. At the start of World War I, the army consisted of 840,000 men. All men under the age of 45 were trained for military service and belonged to the German army or reserves. That's a huge army. And as we remember from going over our overview of World War I, of what happened, the Germans were pretty steadfast. And it's because they had such a strong army. So this is the layout right here, what we have. Let's talk about the British response to the war for a moment. When war broke out in 1914, most people, I hope you can still see this, most people in every country were in favor of the conflict, believing their country's cause was a good one. Although every European country had a large army of conscripted, which means required by law, troops ready to fight the war, governments appealed for more to come forward with war propaganda in the form of persuasive posters, which made war sound exciting and heroic. Britain, however, only had a small army made up of volunteers. On August 6th of that year, 1914, the British Secretary of War, Lord Kitchener, asked for 100,000 new recruits. Whole streets and villages of eager recruits lined up to join, and those not eligible for war, such as men who were too young, often lied about their age. Most thought they would be home by Christmas of that year. As we know, it went on for 4 more years. There it is. By the end of 1915, almost 2.5 million men had volunteered, but more were needed to fill the depleted ranks of soldiers. In January 1916, conscription, which is compulsory enlistment, was introduced for all single men aged 18 to 41. Some people who refused to join up were given white feathers as a sign of cowardice. Certain religious groups objected to the war because they believed it was wrong to kill, while other people did not agree on the reasons behind the war and refused to fight. Both groups were known as conscientious objectors. Now, some objectors served in non-combatant units such as medical services. So if someone didn't believe the war was worth fighting, or their religion told them that they couldn't kill, and they still wanted to serve in some way, they were medics. They were people that went out and helped people that were hurt during the war. So you'll hear of that too whenever you're talking about war. There always are going to be people that in one way or another don't believe that they should fight in the war, but they want to do something else. So